Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in the essay writing process, it's important to take a minute to review MLA format. You've learned about this before, probably in grade 10, or at least hopefully grade 9 and 10, but at least grade 10. So I'm just going to give you a brief sort of refresher on what MLA format is in this video. You can watch it again as many times as you need to so that you remember how to cite your sources properly. Okay, so the MLA, or the Modern Language Association, is a group that determines rules for giving credit to original authors in academic works. So in other words, it's a group of people that are basically paid to determine the rules of giving credit to other authors when you borrow ideas in an academic work, such as an essay. MLA format, no matter where you are studying in the world, is the same. So if you're writing an essay in Italy, let's say, and the professor asks you for MLA format, it's the same as it is here. So it's sort of a universal way for academics to give credit to other authors when they borrow their ideas. Why do we have to do this? As we've talked about before, plagiarism is taken very seriously in post-secondary institutions. If you are caught plagiarizing, you could be kicked out of school. And learning how to properly cite your sources is a way to avoid being accused of plagiarism. It's perfectly acceptable in the academic world to borrow ideas and then analyze them in your own words. What is not acceptable is when you borrow those ideas and don't give credit where credit is due. So the MLA basically tells us the proper way to do this. How does this apply to your essay? Well, you're writing an analytical essay, and as we've discussed, you need to back up your thesis, your argument, with quotations from the text. You need quotations from Someday and quotations from your research. These quotations are your proof, okay? Now, I'm just going to add a little note here. When I say quotations, these quotations can be direct quotations, meaning you are taking word for word what the author is saying, or in the case of your research, you may use indirect quotations. So an indirect quotation is when you take an idea that an author is putting forth and you rephrase it in your own words. Now, you don't need to include quotation marks when you do this, but you do need to include a citation. And I'm going to explain what a citation is in a little bit. Okay? So again, you're using direct quotes from Someday, but your quotations from your research can be either direct, meaning word for word, you're copying word for word what the author has said, or they can be indirect, meaning you are paraphrasing the words of the author in your own words, okay? And as I mentioned before, the most important part of this essay is your ability to explain how the quotations support your thesis. Not summarizing the text in that section of the essay, but explaining how the quotations support your thesis, okay? Okay, so when you're citing a source in an essay, you must follow this format, okay? So if you're using a direct quotation, you put the quotation in quotation marks, okay, without the final punctuation. You have a bracket, the author's last name, and the page number with a comma, okay? So it's bracket, author's last name, comma, page number, okay? If there's no author for your source, you provide the next piece of information that you have, which is usually the title, okay? So for example, if we were taking a direct quotation from The Outsiders, it would look like this. Quotation marks, we are poorer than the socias in the middle class, quotation marks, bracket, Hinton, comma, 3, bracket, then you put the final punctuation, not until the bracket is closed. Okay, so just some things to remember. You only need to include the author's last name if the quotation before it comes from a different source. So in your case, you will always have to include the author's last name because you are alternating sources. You're going from Someday to your research, back to Someday to your research. So you're going to have to make sure you include either the author's last name or the next available piece of information in your citation. It's called an in-text citation. The little part in brackets is your citation, okay? Remember that you need a citation for all quotations, whether they are direct or indirect, okay? So basically the way it works is that your in-text citation, so the little part that you have at the end of your quotation in brackets, each of those little in-text citations corresponds to an entry in your works cited list. Your works cited list appears at the end of your essay. It's your bibliography, okay? And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a little bit. Okay. So when you're including an in-text citation, the final punctuation in the quotation comes after the final bracket. So see, after socias in this example here, I did not include the period. You put the period after the citation, okay? Now, these rules are completely different if you are including a quotation that is longer than 4 lines when typed. And we're talking about a direct quotation here. If it's longer than 4 lines when you type it, then there's a different set of rules, and I will explain them right now. Okay, if your quotation is longer than 4 lines when you type it, you will need to do what is called an offset quotation. So an in-text citation is when you have the little bracket and it's just in the same line as you're writing. You don't have to skip a line. You just keep writing your essay as normal. An offset quotation is exactly what it says. It's offset from your essay. So what you're going to do for an offset quotation, you're going to stop your introduction to your setup to your quotation wherever it is. You're going to end with a colon, okay? You're going to begin writing your quotation on the next line after indenting. Every line is indented. There are no quotation marks, and you have to single space the quotation. And then you also reduce the size of your font from 12 to 10, okay? I know that's very confusing. I'm going to show you what it looks like right now. Okay. So once you've completed writing out your quotation, you finish with your final punctuation before the bracket this time. So you're going to have to include a citation here as well, but this time, because it's offset, your final punctuation goes before the bracket, okay? The last thing you have is your citation, which is the author or the next available piece of information with the page number if you have it, okay? Once you have finished your quotation, you go back to writing your essay on the next line, increase your font again, go back to double spacing, and continue your analysis as you were before. Okay, so it looks something like this. So say if we were writing an essay on Romeo and Juliet and we wanted to include a longer quotation from Mercutio, it would look something like this. So Mercutio comments on Romeo's inability to fight Tybalt when he says, see how I stop exactly where I'm going to put in the quotation and I add the colon, okay? Then I skipped a line, I indented. Here I didn't reduce my font, sorry about that. Here I didn't reduce my font, but you will reduce your font size, okay? And I put the quotation. Do you see how I ended with the end punctuation, okay? And then the citation goes at the very end, okay? Now I'm done putting in my quotation. I'm going to go back to my analysis. I go to the next line, I increase my font size, and I continue double spacing, and I continue writing my analysis, okay? I know that's really confusing. If you want to avoid having to do this, my suggestion is do not include any quotations that are longer than 4 lines. Keep your quotations short. Your analysis is more important than the length of your quotations, okay? Okay, so moving on, your works cited page is the final page of your essay. This is your bibliography or your works cited, okay? Here you have to list all the sources that you cited in your in-text and offset quotations. So if you remember, I said that each of your citations corresponds to an entry in your works cited, okay? It's a separate piece of paper. The title goes in the center of the page, and this page is not numbered. It goes right at the end. So here is the format for works cited entries. If you're using a book, so for Someday, for example, you put the last name of the author, comma, first name, period. The title is italicized or underlined. You put the city of publication, colon, the publisher, comma, date, period, okay? Every comma and period is important, so make sure that you follow this format exactly, okay? If it's an article or short story in a book, so a number of you are using articles from newspapers, so this would apply for that. You put the last name of the author, comma, first name. The title of the article goes in quotation marks. The title of the book or the newspaper would be in italics. The city of publication, wherever the newspaper or article was published. The publisher, comma, date, and then if you have a page number, include the page number, okay? If you're using a website, you put the last name of the author, comma, first name, then you put the title of the article or the website, okay? You put the word internet indicating that it is an internet source. In triangle brackets, you put the URL, that is the website. You put the access date is the last thing you put, and it's day, month, year. You always have to include the access date because online information can change at any minute. So I need to know that when you access the information on that particular date, that was the information that was on the website, since it can change, okay? Now, for all of these examples, if there's a piece of information that you do not have, you move on to the next piece. So for example, in a website, maybe your website article doesn't have an author. So you would skip the author name and you'd move right to the title, okay? You can only provide your reader with as much information as you have, okay? Okay, so a couple things to note about your works cited. It needs to be listed in alphabetical order by last name. It goes by last name. If your entry in your works cited is more than one line, the second and the following lines are indented. Sorry about that, my cat just ran over the keyboard. Okay, and then lastly, you only, as I said before, you only need to include information that is provided to you, okay? If the information is not there, leave it out. Okay. So there's also rules for formatting your essay. So not only does the MLA provide rules for citations and giving credit where credit is due when you're borrowing ideas from other authors, the Modern Language Association also provides rules for formatting, okay, when you're actually word processing or publishing your essay. So your essay needs to be written in 12-point Times New Roman or 10-point Arial font only. Those are the only two fonts that are acceptable, and those are the only two font sizes that are acceptable, okay? All pages except for the first page are numbered with your last name on each page, okay? So all pages except for the first name should have your last name and the page number, okay? The top left-hand corner of the first page of your essay, you need to include the following information: your name, the course code, my name, and the date, okay? No title pages. That goes at the top left-hand corner of your page. The title of your essay should follow in the center of the page, also in 12-point font, and then you start writing your essay directly below that. So no title pages here, okay? Also, your essay needs to be double-spaced. I will not accept any essays that are not double-spaced, okay? So please remember to double-space. The only thing in your essay that should not be double-spaced is if you have an offset quotation. We've already spoken about that. You have to single space for offset quotations. Everything else should be double-spaced. Okay, so overall, I understand this stuff is very confusing. The best way to learn it is to practice using it, which is why I'm insisting that you use it, and you will lose marks if you do not follow this format, okay? You can always ask me for help if you need it, and you can watch this video a million times if you need to, okay? So, you know, try your best. I'm going to be a little bit more lenient on this essay than I will for your ISP essay. However, you will lose marks if your MLA format is incorrect, okay? So that's about it. Good luck, and I will see you tomorrow.